So that will come up in...
Do you mean you've had them logging before?
Yes,
staff?
yes. Okay, so... Alright, so we're on. Okay, so hopefully you can see and hear us well. For those of you that have tuned in for the first time, this is a series of webinars that Griffith University is doing to cover the academic areas of interest that we find a lot of our Canadian students want to go into. And today we're going to be talking about human services, social work and child and family studies. But just as a little bit way of introduction, my name is Anthony Bradley. I am the regional manager in Griffith International, and I look after Canada, the US, Sub-Saharan Africa, Central and in Eastern Europe, all the way from Vienna to Vladivostok. So rather a large tract of the planet, but I'm very happy to say that Canada is part of that group. And Canada by far and away is the most popular of our countries from where our international students come from from my perspective. For the last 10 years we've been working very closely with KOM Consultants, and we were the first university in Australia to establish a very systematic block transfer of credit from the Canadian colleges into our bachelor's and now our master's degrees. And so these webinars initially started off as being very, very generic, and as more and more students showed interest in it, we decided to do the more academic specific. So we are that's my text message. We are a comprehensive university, which means we're not beholden to one particular area of academia. We teach everything from A to Z, literally accounting to zoology. We're a multi-campus university. We consist of 5 campuses that run down the corridor in southeastern Queensland from Brisbane right the way down to the Gold Coast. We're currently on the Logan campus, which is sort of in the middle and a little bit out to the west, out in the countryside. It's a nice peaceful campus, and I actually wish I had an office here sometimes because there's plenty of parking. So as I said, today we're going to be talking about human services. It falls into the health group, the health faculty if you like, which is one of the largest health faculties in Australia. Currently about 15,000 students belong to that particular faculty, and they're spread across 9 schools I believe. And Human Services and Social Work is one of those schools. So I'll just introduce Dr. Jane Fowler.
Hello, I'm a senior lecturer here in the school. I have visited Canada, I was nearly going to go the Canadian route then, Canada several times in the last, I guess 5 or 6 years now, and met many students from many of the colleges there. And we've had several of those students come here and study with us. They come and study in one of 3 different programs, the Bachelor of Social Work, the Bachelor of Human Services, or the Bachelor of Child and Family Studies. And depending on what program they have completed back in Canada, it depends how long they spend here to get a degree. So as you know, the process is that if you have done 3 years of study over there for a diploma, you would normally come here for 12 months and get your degree, and if you have done a 2-year diploma you would normally come for 18 months depending on what the program is. So that's the general process that we have.
We'd be very interested in hearing any specific questions that you may have that relate to articulating into our programs from whichever institution students are at in Canada. So if you are viewing this webinar, please don't be shy. If you can introduce yourself on the social stream. Just tell us your name and tell us which college that you're studying at and which area of interest that you have, and then we can direct our monologue really towards you to sort of address your questions. So in terms of internationalization, the university has about 43,000 students in total across those 5 campuses I mentioned, and about 25% of those are international. So those students come from a huge array of countries, from about 130 different countries. Obviously, certain countries prefer certain academic disciplines. For the human services, what sort of nationalities do you have in your classes?
Oh wow, we have everything. We have students from the United States, students from Canada, we have students from Africa, and many different parts of Africa. We have students from China, Griffith as a whole has how many nationalities?
About 131 different nationalities.
James, hold on. Call you back.
So yeah, we have a huge range of international students, and really the Canadians, we find that the Canadians fit in very well. You guys come from a Commonwealth education background, so you speak English, you understand problem-based learning, and really there is so the education mentality is very, very similar between Australia and Canada. So in terms of accommodation, the students that actually do the programs here, is you have on-campus accommodation or regional?
We do, and actually our school is based across two of the campuses that Anthony mentioned earlier. We're on the Logan campus, which he described, and we're also at the Gold Coast campus. I guess a much bigger, livelier campus. Some people prefer that. Some people prefer to come to our smaller campus here. A lot of the Canadian students that come here do come to Logan. They seem to prefer that campus. It's smaller and more manageable, and they stay generally in student accommodation, which is in walking distance. It's like literally 3 minutes up the road. We have a lot of Canadian students staying there at the moment. Often they might stay there for 6 months and then go out into a house as a group, but generally here at Logan they have been staying in that accommodation and are very happy with it.
And in terms of the structure of the Human Services Bachelor's degree, can you just talk to that a little bit about the sort of the number of programs and the expectations on the students during that program?
Yeah, sure. A general expectation here is that, and this would be across all three of the bachelor's programs that I mentioned, social work, child and family, and human services. A normal structure would be to do 4 courses in a semester. A semester is 13 weeks long. You would do 4 courses, and we would individualise a program for you depending on what background you have come from and what courses you have already covered. Within each course, you would generally attend university for 3 hours for each of those 4 courses, so about 12 hours attendance. I know that's very different from the college background that you have. 12 hours contact a week, so there's plenty of time to do independent study and you'll work on your assignments outside of class, and there's also time of course for you to do part-time work while you're here, which you're allowed to do as well. A general course, let's break it down to one course. Let's say you were studying group facilitation as a course. As I said, it would be about 3 hours contact a week, and you would have probably 2 or 3 pieces of assessment throughout the semester, and that would be sort of the breakup. That would be a typical course. They're not all like that, but that would be typical.
We've got a question here from Alice Eve, who says, a guy came into our class and said the 5th semester placement block can be completed back in Ontario.
That's absolutely true, and that would be talking about the Bachelor of Social Work, where you would need to come here for actually 5 semesters to complete the Bachelor of Social Work, but that 5th semester can be done back in Canada if we can organise a placement for you back there. So yes, that's correct. I imagine that guy was from KOM.
Very possibly. Alice Eve is a very popular viewer of our webinars. But please feel free to, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them up. One thing worth mentioning is that all our international students in Australia have an inbuilt work permit in their study visa, which entitles them to part-time work. And as long as you don't go over the 40 hours per 2 weeks, then the Department of Immigration won't come down on you too hard. So students do tend to supplement their income by doing part-time work. If you are proactive, you may find something on campus in terms of data entry or basic work. But a lot of our students tend to move towards the tourism and hospitality options, working in the cafes and the restaurants and the pubs, collecting trolleys in supermarkets. We've got a French guy that drives a taxi part-time. So there are work options for you. And for those of you going on to do, if you complete a bachelor's degree having spent 2 full years in Australia, then you are entitled to the post-study work visa when you finish, which gives you 2 years' work of work eligibility. And if you go on to either or any of our 2-year master's programs, you get the same work eligibility after that as well. So if you complete 2 years at bachelor's level or 2 years at master's level, you will get 3 years of post-study work eligibility. This is all part of the Australian government's drive to attract skilled individuals to stay here.
There are places to work near the Logan campus. A question just came up. There's a huge shopping centre called Logan Hyperdome, not far away, and we find that many of our students have part-time employment there. We should also point out that part-time employment here, an hourly wage is between about $15 and $20. So it's pretty lucrative in that regard.
That's right. I mean, we recommend all our international students budget about $18,000 per year for living expenses. But if you take into consideration 20 hours a week at $15 to $20 per hour, you can certainly supplement that and give yourself a little bit of pocket money. Steph J111, are all programs offered at the Gold Coast campus?
The Bachelor of Child and Family is not available at the Gold Coast campus. The Bachelor of Social Work is available at both, and I'm going to give you 50 cents each way on Human Services. We're hoping to kick that off this year, but in general, for many of the courses you will do, they will be available on both campuses.
Alice Eve is asking a question: how many courses per semester are our students expected to be on campus every day?
Okay, well, as I said earlier, 4 courses is a full-time load. You will do 4 courses per semester. Of course, if you decide to pick one up in a summer break or a winter break, if they're available, that will reduce the number you'll do during the normal semester. And are you on campus every day? No, you're not on campus every day. That can never be guaranteed ahead of the timetable coming up. You definitely won't be on campus every day. You are likely to be on campus, I would say, 3 days. That's very typical, doing 4 courses, 3 days only, and again, 12 hours probably in total for the whole week on campus.
And in terms of work, integrated learning and community placements, are they available during in these programs?
We find that the students that come from Canada have done a wealth of placements. They're actually often ahead of the game as far as our students are concerned. So we try to talk to them about doing courses that actually don't have placements because they already have that experience. And of course the idea is not to come here and repeat what you've already done, it's to come here and experience something new. So there are some courses that have placements involved. Certainly the child and family have a lot of embedded placements working with children, and you would do that. But again, it depends on the sort of courses. There's a community internship course that is available also through the university.
Okay, and R. Smith is asking, why is the Bachelor of Social Work longer than Human Services and Child and Family?
If you were an Australian student, if you were an Australian student, it would take you 4 years to do the Bachelor of Social Work and 3 to do the others. That's because it is a professionally registered qualification, the Bachelor of Social Work, and that requirement for 4 years is from the Australian Association of Social Workers. So there's the additional year of study.
And in terms of, I mean, this is a question that we get all the time. I know you know that, and we've mentioned it on a number of occasions. But in terms of the mobility of these degrees, recognition overseas, when a student finishes with us and graduates and goes back home, are they generally recognised and accredited, or are there conversion programs that they need to take?
That's a really good question, and one that I've been trying to get the answer to, much to everyone's disdain for several years. But the main issue is that we haven't actually had a Canadian student complete a Bachelor of Social Work here and go back and register in Toronto or Ontario to date. So we can't say that it will be registered, and we can't say that it won't be. The likelihood, we can say, is very strong that it would, because there's no reason for it not to be. We have compared the two registration requirements between Canada and Australia. They're not different. There should be no reason. But another thing that happens in Canada, back at your end, is that they won't accredit a degree per se. So they won't say the Bachelor of Social Work at Griffith is okay. What they'll do is they'll look at Anne Smith's application for it, and they will judge it on that. But of course there's no reason to say that if they say yes to one, they're likely to, yes, that'll be the test case.
So it's a case-by-case scenario then in many cases. There's not a blanket recognition board.
That's exactly right. And we've had 2 students that we were hoping would go back and register, but they have married and stayed here in Australia. So,
well,
that's
a good way into the country. We were talking about that, isn't it? In terms of career outcomes, students that don't complete these degrees, what sort of areas of employment are they likely to be able to move into?
Students that complete these degrees?
Yeah, so human services, child and family, social work.
Look, we have students that finish and they work in government agencies, non-government agencies, private enterprises. They work with people who are ageing, they work with young people, they work with youths, they work across the spectrum. They work in policy, they work in face-to-face, the front end of it all, the coalface, so to speak. The broad range of areas is quite phenomenal. In fact, I'm not really aware of another degree that has such a broad range of possible employment opportunities.
And one thing that I keep on mentioning in these webinars is that Australia has on the whole has a very low unemployment rate. So we're running at about 5.56% across the whole country now. And one thing that Australia does do very well is accommodate the growing infrastructure and the growing population by meeting the needs of society at every level, whether it's accountants right the way through to social work and consultancy and child and family consultant work. So whereas we never guarantee work, you can certainly rest assured that the unemployment level is low enough to be able to accommodate new migrants and recently graduated students. If you have any other questions, please keep them coming along. R. Smith and Alice, you're always good with the questions. We'd like to see a few more from you. One thing I need to mention about the working eligibility here is that students, as I said, during term time, they have a 40 hours per 2-week period work eligibility. That only applies during term. So each term is about 13 weeks long. In between those, so during the term breaks, you can work full-time. So again, it's not a case of you arriving on the scene and we will say, welcome to Australia, here's a job. You do need to be proactive. You do need to make sure that you're networking, talking to the right people, knocking on doors, and you will definitely pick up part-time work. Part-time work opportunities in Logan, is there much around here?
As I said earlier, the Hyperdome is a great employer of our students. It's a very, very large shopping centre. But in saying that too, there are different childcare centres. Before and after school care, we have a lot of students employed in areas around here. Generally that sort of thing, yeah. Sometimes we have students who are private carers for people with different disabilities, yeah.
We've got, how many Canadian students do we have? I'll let Jane answer that shortly, but I just want to point out that in the past 4 semesters, the amount of interest registered for human services, child and family and social work has increased. So what we find is that areas of academic interest have peaks and troughs in terms of interest, and certainly human services and that kind of academic study is on the rise at the moment. But in terms of actual numbers, do we know off the top of our heads?
Actually, I can't be precise about that, but I have recently been working with 3 Canadian students that were here last year. They were frequent drop-in-ers to my office here, which is great. And I know that we have 3 starting next week. It's orientation week here. This is the beginning of our academic year here in Australia. We actually head to orientation week next week, and then we have a 13-week semester. Then a week for during that 13 weeks you'll have a week's break as well in there. 13 weeks, then you'll have a study week. 2 weeks of exams. When I say 2 weeks of exams, you're likely to have little or no exams during that 2 weeks. A 4-week break in the middle of the year. Kick it off again for second semester, the same. And then over the Christmas break, which of course is our summer, you have at least 3 months off university, where Canadian students often combine work and travel.
That's that period of time. So between end of October and sort of April and May, it's the warm period here, it's the summer. I mean, right outside the window now it's about 30 degrees and feels like 35. The humidity's up and we're waiting for some rain. So it's the opposite climatically to Ontario. We've got a number of questions here. Steph J asks, what is the student life like at Griffith? How would you describe the student life?
The student life at Griffith is different on each of the campuses, so I'll stick to the two campuses that our school is based on. Logan is very what I would call laid back and relaxed. A much smaller number of students, few buildings, has a much closer, I would say, staff to student interaction. Staff know the students know the staff, probably similar to the sorts of backgrounds you've come from in the college. The Gold Coast is huge in comparison. A much livelier campus, huge
Hectic,
action, hectic.
Some people find it quite hectic. The volume of traffic is much greater down on the Gold Coast and up in the Nathan campus. But so the Logan campus is the quiet one. It's actually quite a nice place. Actually, there's plenty of parking. It's quite relaxed, and as Dr. Fowler said, there's a much greater interaction between staff and students. In terms of student life, if you are a Canadian student, and you want an insight from a Canadian student, take a look at the Canadian Students Association on Griffith International's Facebook page. And you'll have the opportunity to use that as a forum for your own questions, and you can get non-biased responses from currently enrolled Canadian students. Alice is asking, what's the GPA required to get into the Bachelor of Social Work?
What is the current situation with KOM? Isn't it if a student has a score of, is it?
Normally we ask for about 70%.
70%.
So if you're coming out of the colleges with 70%, you're eligible to move on on majority of our articulations into our bachelor's degrees.
And it's better than eligible, isn't it? Don't we have a
It's
guarantee?
almost guaranteed. Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Guaranteed that we'll take you, and there's not a competition for places.
That's right.
If 70 of you came with that score, then we would take 70 of you.
As long as, so there's no cap other than programs like medicine and dentistry and physio. There is no quota or cap on student numbers. So as long as we're meeting the workplace health and safety arrangements, we will take as many applications as we get, as long as you meet the entry requirements, which are 70%, a 70% pass out of your with your college diploma.
There's a question there about, is there an option for family housing? Yes, that housing that I mentioned earlier, anybody can live there. In fact, non-students can live there. A staff member 2 doors up from me here in my office has been living in that accommodation for quite some time. Families move in, even people not associated with the university. It's actually not owned by the university, but it is mainly university students in there.
Got another question saying, is it cheaper to live at Logan? So if you have the option of studying at either the Logan or the Gold Coast, would you say that living expenses are cheaper here than down the Gold Coast?
I would say living expenses are cheaper at Logan. Is it easy to get to the Gold Coast? The answer to that's yes. You can catch the train to the Gold Coast, you can catch the bus to the Gold Coast. It's probably, to the Gold Coast campus, if I were to drive now to the Gold Coast, would be 20 minutes.
Exactly. I've actually just come up from the Gold Coast and I caught the traffic going into Brisbane. But if you're actually coming up from the Gold Coast, you turn left off the motorway out to Logan before you really hit that traffic. So really you're not looking for much more than 50 kilometres down to the Gold Coast. Yep. And there's public transport. C. de Villiers 28, yes, the public transportation is easy to use. Australians do like their cars here, so you may want to buy a car if you do study over here. But if you don't, you can certainly hop on the sort of the many buses that we have, or take the train down.
And we should say the same going the other way. That's 20 minutes south to the Gold Coast, but it's 30 minutes on public transport north to the inner city of Brisbane also.
Exactly. So you have the best of both worlds. If you want the coast, if you want the ocean, you can go down south, or 20 minutes north of us you have the capital city of Queensland, which is Brisbane, which has a population of nearing 2 million now. So you'll have everything that you can find in your normal metropolis. Any other questions? Nobody's asked about how much it costs. Normally we get the how much does it cost. Living expenses, you're going to need to budget $18,000 a year, and your human services program costs, I think, $23,000 per year at the moment. We're undergoing certain reviews at the moment through the Australian Qualifications Framework, which is going to affect all Australian universities. But currently we sit at about $23,000 per year for the human services, I believe. Any other questions? Go ahead.
You're all obviously in touch with KOM, or you wouldn't be on this now,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
they're really your best source of all information in regards to your trip out here. As you know, they assist you with everything. So they're your first port of call. But I'm also happy to answer any individual emails. My email address is available through KOM, and I'm happy to write back to you individually with any questions that you might have, or direct you to where you can find the answers.
Absolutely, and please feel free to do that. I mean, it's a big decision to make, and it's a big financial investment to make, so make sure you cover all the bases before you do that. C. DeVillio 28, are there any scholarships? I'm afraid scholarships are, I mean, I get asked scholarship questions all the time, and I guess the basic rule of thumb is that most Australian universities don't front-end scholarships, which means that we're not inclined to give any sort of scholarship or financial funding at the beginning, at the application stage or the entry stage. Obviously, if you're further on down the track and you're a high-profile student, the university wants to hold on to you, there are certain options that you can explore, but we certainly don't ask students to rely on the possibility of funding. Now, in terms of loans, that's a different thing altogether. The Ontario Ministry of Education has, of course, the OSAP loan system, which maxes out at about $10,000 per year. And I believe if you're taking that money internationally, then it's not assets tested. So if your mum and dad are both multi-millionaires, I still believe that you're eligible to apply for that $10,000 OSAP loan as long as you take it overseas. If you're from Alberta, it's a little bit more, and I believe if you're from Saskatchewan, it's a little bit more as well. So I guess that's a reflection of their current economies. But certainly my suggestion would be to touch base with KOM Consultants. They'll be able to steer you in the right direction from the Canadian perspective. Not only just the application for the program itself, but most definitely for the visa application. So Canadians will get visas very, very easily in general for studying here, but you still have to make sure that all the administration side of it is done very neatly, and KOM should be your go-to people for that. There was another question, wasn't there?
Is it cheaper to live in residence or off campus? As I said before, the accommodation just up the road here, a 3-minute walk, isn't actually on campus. It's just in the street that the university is on. So it's off campus technically. As far as cost, I don't know the actual cost there, but it's pretty nice accommodation. So I imagine you would get cheaper. That's why a lot of students start off there for 6 months and then band together and find themselves a house or an apartment further away from the campus.
Alice Eve is asking about bringing her small children with her. We have a great big paddock where we have kangaroos in, and we leave all the small kids in there all day, don't we, to play with the kangaroos. But look, yes, of course you can bring your children with you. All your dependents will be sitting under your student visa, but you will still have to pay for childcare. And childcare isn't that cheap in Australia, but that is something that we can help you with further on down the track if you want to go there.
You certainly won't be the first person to bring your children with you.
Is it possible to take a year off before travelling to Australia for study? Of course. When you finish with your diploma or you finish with any qualification out of Canada, we often suggest that a student that hasn't really decided which way they're going to go academically, take a bit of time off, make some money. Your diploma qualification is valid really for up to 5 years. It's probably valid for even more, but we like people to stay within that study mentality for not much longer than 5 years before they reapply or apply for a new institution. But just bear in mind that when you start putting off your overseas study, the window of opportunity does start closing. So you may get married, you may take out a mortgage, you may get a dog, and all these little components they sort of put constraints on you to go and study overseas. So
Absolutely.
By all means, take a year off, make some money, but do that with the focus of overseas study before you start committing to settling down. Any other comments we'd
I
like to
can't
mention?
think of any other general issues. As I said, I'm more than happy to answer individual emails from any of you, and again that KOM have the answers to most of the questions.
Yeah. Like I said, we're hoping to do these webinars on a regular basis, so at least once per semester. And this is being recorded so for posterity, so this will be uploaded onto KOM's website. So for those of you that want to sort of look at myself and Jane all over again and listen to us talking with our funny accents, by all means do so. But if you do have students or friends that are interested in learning a little bit more about what we offer here in terms of human services, social work and child and family, then just talk to KOM and they can send you the link to this webinar.
Alice, Eve, how does the visa work, and do we help KOM help with that? The visa application?
The visa application is very, very simple. The basic process in a nutshell is this. You would apply through KOM to study at Griffith University. We review your application and then deem you eligible for an offer or ineligible for an offer. If you receive an offer from us, you are still not obliged to accept it. So if you decide it's not for you, you can chuck it in the bin. If you decide to accept it, you sign the acceptance form, send it back to us with 1 semester of tuition fees. We then give you an electronic confirmation of enrollment, which basically means you are put into our system. As soon as you are in our system, you will get a number which you will need to apply for your visa. Canadians can apply for visas online, and it can take as little as 48 hours. But as I said, make sure that you're working through KOM, because you have to have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed on the application form. As soon as you have that visa, you're ready to go. You're ready to book your accommodation, book your flights, pack your bags and leave. You do have to arrive here at least 1 week before term starts in order to attend the orientation week, where we give you information on academic components. But not only that, we talk about give you maps of the local regions, where to buy a bicycle, where to go swimming, where not to go swimming. So extrinsic information. That's the visa side of things. Alice, does the university have financial assistance for lower income Canadians wanting to travel? The short answer of that is no. We don't use that as any sort of promotional tool. There are loan systems available through the provinces in Canada. I would say that the vast majority of any financial assistance that we have at this end, or that goes towards research funding, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
If you're doing a PhD and your thesis or dissertation is something that we need, you're likely to fall into that Class A category for people wanting to do research. So it's not something that I would be relying on. It would be something that you would not have to fall back on. You need to really sort of make sure that you are self-supporting as best you can. Okay. Any other questions? There's some very good questions there, everybody. Well, what we'll do is we'll sign off here. We'll say goodbye. We've covered a huge range. We've covered both the generic university, work opportunities, and we've also covered the program areas itself. But I strongly urge you that if you do have follow-up questions, please get in contact with KOM. You can find them on the web, KOM Consultants. They've got an office in Hamilton, Ontario, so just go and knock on their door and walk right in. Or you can send Jane an email if you do have program-specific questions. So we'll give you 20 seconds to come up with any more questions, because there is a time delay. So get your final questions in, and we'd be happy to answer them. How's the weather over there in Ontario? I understand you've had a bit of snow. A bit of a filler until the questions come through. Okay, everybody. Well, we will leave it there. We'll say goodbye.
Goodbye.
And thank you very much for tuning in and for your questions. We would love to see you on campus. So if you do make it to the Logan campus, or indeed any of our campuses, and you spot Jane or I walking down the street, make sure you hit us up for a cup of coffee or a beer, depending on the time. All right, thank you very much, everybody.
Have a good weekend.
Goodbye now.